I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Hammond Plan Commission for Monday, August 15th, 2022. Would you please rise and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Morris-Smith, could you please call the roll?
Roger Brock.
Here.
Dean Button.
Here.
Michael Dye. Ann Herbert.
Here.
William Hutton.
Here.
Thomas Kazmierzak.
Here.
Dan Spitali.
Here.
Sharon Zaney. Marcus Taylor.
Here.
7 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you kindly. Next item on the agenda, the board should have received a copy in their packet of the minutes of May the 16th, 2022. I hope you've all had a chance to review them. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
A second.
Thank you, Councilman Spitali, seconded by Mr. Hutton, Commissioner Hutton. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? Any discussion? Any discussion? Roll call on the motion.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Thomas Kazmierzak.
Yes.
Dan Spitali.
Yes.
Marcus Taylor.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. Motion passed.
Next item is item 4, old business. Is there any old business?
No old business.
Thank you, Mr. Poland. Next item is item 5, new business. CP 2022, sorry, let me start again. CP-22-09, a petition of AURLP LLC-1 to reclassify property at 4545 Calumet Avenue from I-1 Light Industrial District and C4 General Commercial District to I-1 Light Industrial District within the city of Hammond, Lake County, Indiana. I'd ask the Mrs. Morris-Smith if the notification requirements for this petition have been met.
Yes, they have.
Thank you very much. Turn it over to the petitioner, our esteemed Scott Yaney, to address the board. Mr. Yaney.
Good evening. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you. I am Scott Yaney, the attorney for the petitioner, which is AURLP LLC-1. And hopefully that's the last time I have to say that this evening. We are here concerning 4545 Calumet. And first of all, I'm going to go at maybe a little bit of a quick summary this evening. I understand that might be helpful. But if I miss anything and anyone would like me to go back, by all means, just maybe nod or give me an eye raise and I'll give you a little more information. But this is 4545 Calumet Avenue. It's a unique property in that it sits between 2 sets of railroad tracks, the B&O and also the South Shore line. And so it makes it rather interesting when the boundaries north and south of the property are railroad tracks. Another interesting feature of this property, it sits on Calumet Avenue, but the first, maybe I won't call it half, but nearly half of the property is zoned C4, and then we'll call it the rear or half to the east is I-1. Situated on that property is a building, and if we drew the line of what is C4 and what is I-1, it would bisect that building. The building itself is an industrial laundromat. It has existed there for quite some time now, and I've given you kind of some historical information, but petitioner through a predecessor, but affiliated with AURLP, acquired the property in 1985, and in 1986 began to maintain and operate an industrial laundry business that was Aero Uniform, which existed at that location for many years. Subsequently, the property was occupied by UniFirst, and as we know, as you folks would know, they relocated and they have they're to the north of the city now on Calumet Avenue. So we are addressing that particular property, and to do so, AURLP has been marketing that property for sale, looking for a user. Well, it was all well and good. 1985, we kind of got by with whatever the zoning was, and now trying to find somebody who's willing to come in and say, hey, we've got this industrial laundromat that we potentially could sell, but it's bisected in its zoning requirements. So really what we're here this evening is seeking to unify the zoning classification for this single piece of property. And then the question it begs is, well, should this be C4 or I1? We worked extensively with Mr. Poland. Also, the administration was involved because there are concerns. This is on Calumet Avenue, and we want to be careful with how this property is addressed and handled. We also want to be mindful of the sorts of things that could occur because it is between two sets of railroad tracks and vehicles coming in and out. And so we considered both uses. And in fact, we started down an I-1 road, then kind of went down a C4 road, and we discovered that created all sorts of unintended consequences. It just would create more problems than we could hope to solve, because C4 is an umbrella that starts bringing in C1, 2, 3, and all kinds of ancillary definitions. And so we determined that I1 is the appropriate classification, but it can't be a full and open I1 classification. There has to be limitations. We had discussion with Mr. Poland about specifically what those limitations should be, looking at I1 permitted uses, and very carefully and over a period of time went back and forth as to, okay, we can allow this, but not this. And even in the classifications themselves, the line items, sometimes there would be a particular use of the general area that was permitted, but not the entire use. Kurt Baller is here. He is the owner's representative, and he's been involved throughout the process and visits the property regularly because they're doing all sorts of things to ready this property. But we engaged in that dialogue, and we finally arrived at a list of, I'll call it, curtailed, permitted I-1 uses. And that material, or that list, appears in your packet, and specifically on page 8 of my supporting letter. And we are going to, if you folks see appropriate to rezone this property this evening, we will record a commitment that says that the I-1, it is I-1 zoned, but it's subject to this modification, so that anybody that would acquire this property in the future will have notice that these are the I-1 uses that are permitted on the property. Now, usually when we're talking rezoning, and I have to get up here and I say, well, we're trying to get it ready for development. We don't know who's going to go in this spot, and then I get to the council because we have to get it approved by the council, and understandably, that's all anybody wants to know, right? In this case, I do know the intended user. You know, this is one of the hurdles that we would have to clear to make it the user of the property, but it's a company called Mickey's Linens, and they are essentially in the same sort of business and intend to put the same use of that property that it has been used since 1986. So we won't see a change, and they hope that they don't ever go out of that building, but they at least need to have some flexibility for who knows, you know, what technology develops in the future, that they would at least have some options. If it is approved, and I've tried to give you some idea because we had to, as part of this process, examine, you know, all right, will this facility, will this plant work for Mickey's? They intend to, you know, they intend to make a big investment in that property, probably at least $15 million from what I've seen of the projections. And so they've worked on some preliminary site plans. These are architectural site plans. These aren't engineering plans. Brian Poland and I have discussed that, and we will eventually get to the point with Mickey's where they will do that, but at least they've had conceptually an understanding of what they could likely do on this site. And it would include, if you look on page 10, kind of the yellow gold shaded area. They would like to put an addition onto the building. In addition to what you're going to see, I think that will be helpful and appreciated from what's out there now. There's going to be, there's landscaping that will go on this site and just general updating because, after a number of years, this property could use some rejuvenation, and that looks like it is on the way. Also on the way, an attendant benefit if Mickey's folks come in. They anticipate bringing anywhere from 15 to 30 new jobs, and they'd have a total number of jobs at that location of between 55 to 70 employees. So it is the, at least the precursor to making this property viable, kind of giving some vibrancy back to this piece of property, which after the UniFirst folks moved on, it has, kind of languored somewhat, but we now have an opportunity to move forward, and if you folks see fit, we'd like your approval of this petition to rezone and classify the entire property as I-1. One other thing I'll mention, because you may see it in the drawings, and that is we have a couple of segments of, there's a segment of an alley and a segment of Cedar Street that we need to vacate because those go through the building as well, and they just look like Cedar Street, and some of these alleys were vacated back in the 50s, and I read this, the ordinance from, I think it was 1955, where they just vacated swaths and swaths of streets in that area and alleys, but somehow this was omitted. So there's just a little cleanup here that we want to do. So if you folks grant this petition, I have also 2 petitions to vacate that alley segment and Cedar Street segment, and Mr. Button and Mr. Poland have reviewed those, and they are ready to go to the council. And in that regard, we've spoken to Mr. Torres. He's prepared to support those petitions, and if you see fit, this petition as well, but we've consulted him about this project and let him know of what could be on the way. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have for me.
Questions for Mr. Yaney? On the list of permitted uses, if I might, the underscore means we're adding that as a new word, right? So, for example, on line 8, small equipment repair services, the
That's
underscore
correct.
small is the addition, and then obviously the lines drawn through are the deletions.
That is correct. In the language of the ordinance, it gives that level of detail that says the underlined words are being added and the stricken are being removed.
Okay, thank you kindly.
Sure.
Any other questions for Mr. Yaney? Okay. Thanks,
Thank you.
Scott. We will be working towards a public hearing here in a second. So at this point in the meeting, we'd ask if there's, we'd like to open up a public hearing for this particular petition. And so we'd ask if there was anyone in the audience willing to speak in favor of this petition. If there's anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition of this petition. If there's anyone in the audience wishing to comment at all on this petition. And finally, if there's anyone on online or on our virtual access port to this meeting that would wish to speak on this petition. Seeing no comments, I would close this portion of the public hearing. I assume that the petitioner has no further comment at this time. Thank you, Mr. Yaney. So from this point, I would turn it over to staff and see what the staff report brings to the Plan Commission. Mr. Poland.
Yeah. Actually, Mr. Yaney, I have a question for you. I'm looking over the commitment document, and I'm just wondering if it's something that may have been inadvertently omitted. Do you have the commitment document? Okay, well, the list, it's really the list of the uses.
And I'll have it up here in just
Okay,
a half
so,
a second.
so just for, under item 22, we're striking the truck, vehicle, and/or heavy, and adding the word small. And then we had excluding construction equipment. And I think that was part of the conversation that we had is trying to clarify what is small equipment rental. And then I look at 8, and we did the small for equipment repair and services, but we didn't put excluding construction equipment there.
Okay, let's see. Well, the short answer is we will make sure that it comports with your request. I'm just looking at the language to make sure my document. So on line 8, right?
Yeah, item 8.
Okay, we have the word small, and then carrying forward to, and I'm sorry, which line, Brian?
22.
22. So at least in the commitment document that I have, and maybe it didn't make it into this letter because I think we may have updated the commitment later, perhaps. In my line 22, on the document that I have dated July 10, which is my latest version, underlined after equipment rental, it says excluding construction equipment. Does that meet your concern?
Yes, and I guess what I'm questioning is that I know we specifically discussed adding that to 22.
Mm-hmm.
We may or may not have been clear in our discussion on item 8 that it probably would match going into that location too.
Well, oh, I see. So add excluding construction equipment to line 8.
Yeah, that's
sorry.
what I'm suggesting. I mean, is there any objections to that?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, I think it was probably talked about, but then, whatever.
Yep.
Things happen. We all know.
That is now added to my use commitment document.
Okay. I appreciate you guys agreeing to that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just going into the staff report, Mr. Yaney did, do a good presentation of characterizing the concerns that we had as a staff. There's a lot of retail activity on Calumet Avenue that is partially based like the way I can surmise as to why this property had the split zoning. Being stuck between 2 railroad tracks is a challenge unto itself for anybody who drives Calumet Avenue and gets caught by one, and then as that clears, then the second one comes through, and then you're really messed up for a while. The good thing about the existing use or the previous use and the future use, there's certainly a lot of years demonstrating that has not been problematic for this area. Our concerns always is that anytime you have industrial zoning, abutting residential, abutting commercial, that there's often inherent conflicts that go with that. Mr. Yaney also already talked about the issues of the vacation of certain alleys and streets that, based on the records, were not completely vacated, and there's also release of easements that are associated with that. As noted, we did discuss that we were going to make this amendment to the commitment document. The commitment process is a bit unique or not often used in the city of Hammond. It's certainly allowed under state statute that a rezoning application can go with commitments of a variety of types of commitments that would add additional provisions on the development of property. And I think we've worked very strongly to find something that is balancing the needs of the current owner, of the buyer, and just what the impact would be on this part of Calumet Avenue. That being said, with a slight amendment, I'm going to go to the recommendation that staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward the petition to the City Council with a favorable recommendation, subject to the finalization of the commitment document with the amendment discussed for item 8. And it's recording within 60 days after the council's approval of the rezoning. If the Plan Commission agrees with the recommendation, staff requests that this report is adopted by the Plan Commission as preliminary findings of fact.
Thank you, Mr. Poland. Any questions from the board to Commission to Mr. Poland? Hearing none. Any other questions or comments regarding the petition? Okay, thank you very much. The chair would entertain a motion from the Plan Commission to forward this petition to the City Council with a favorable recommendation subject to the finalization of the commitment document as amended and its recording within 60 days after after the council approving the rezoning. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Brock. It's been moved and properly seconded to send the petition to the City Council. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Mr. Morris-Smith, roll call on the motion, please.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Ann Herbert,
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Thomas Kazmierzak,
Yes.
Dan Spitali.
Yes.
Marcus Taylor.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
I would also entertain a motion that the Plan Commission agrees with the staff's recommendation and that this staff report be adopted by the Plan Commission as a preliminary finding of fact.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Brock, seconded by Councilman Spitali to make this staff report as a preliminary finding of fact. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Mrs. Morris-Smith, roll call motion.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Ann Herbert,
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Thomas Kazmierzak,
Yes.
Dan Spitali,
Yes.
Marcus Taylor.
Yes.
Dean Button,
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Congratulations to the petitioner. We'll move this on to the City Council for you. Thank you.
Mr. Yanni, are you able to make the change in the commitment document?
And the ordinance as well, I'm sending to you right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you for the technology. Okay.
Shannon, that means we're going to
Next item on the agenda is CP 22-10, a petition of the Hammond Redevelopment Commission for a two-lot subdivision known as Woodmart Sports Facilities Addition, located at 6600 Indianapolis Boulevard in a PUD, Planned Unit Development District, within the city of Hammond. I'd ask Mrs. Morris-Smith if the notification requirements have been met.
Yes, they have.
Thank you. I would ask that hopefully that the commission doesn't have any objections to Mr. Poland acting as both the petitioner And as the staff in this case, is there any objections? Any objections? Any objections? Mr. Poland, please present the petition on behalf of the Hammond Redevelopment Commission.
Yes, I am sure everybody should be familiar with this property. This is 6600 Indianapolis Boulevard. This is the Sportsplex property, the former Carson Perry Spot Woodmore Mall property. So there has been extensive discussions with YMCA to develop a new facility on part of this property. There was an announcement last fall, I believe it was, that this was being worked on. So we're moving towards trying to do some of the, of course, planning issues and the zoning issues. This particular case is the first of 3. The next 2 will appear at the September meeting. Right now, we are taking the Sportsplex property, dividing it into 2 lots. The second lot, 6.36 acres, is going to be for the YMCA. They are also have acquired.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was you.
Sounded like it was coming from you.
That was really strange.
We've all done it there before, Commissioner.
They have acquired additional property for future development, pending some issues with that particular property. Redevelopment Commission is also looking into buying the outlot, which is right next to the former Walmart building, and that's going to help deal with some of the drainage issues that with the property that are happening on the site. The properties along, there's 2 parcels along 167th Street, or actually 3 parcels along 167th Street that the Redevelopment Commission owns. That is also being contemplated for additional parking. Obviously, when you have 2 major sports facilities or recreational facilities right next to each other, you can only imagine the amount of parking that would be generated by that, which is kind of, you look at it this way, it's a good problem to have because that means it's popular and it's being used, but it comes down to, you know, people want to be as close as possible to the facility. They may have to walk to get there, but, you know, we're trying to make that that part of the development work out. The other major thing that really affects, in particular, the subdivision is that we've been looking into having a traffic signal added to Indianapolis Boulevard somewhere around the midpoint between 165th and 167th Street. And that would also help facilitate the traffic movements within the development. And it is reflected on the subdivision plat as an access easement that runs east-west completely from one side of the parcel to the other. The plat also has pre-existing easements that are still being retained. There's a major utility corridor on the west side of the property. Those utilities are going to remain. There is a pipeline easement on 167th Street. That's going to remain. And at least for the time being, there's some access easements on the northern boundary of this property that will remain, but should some other development occurs, that will be addressed at that time. And so, as I said, this is the first of 3, and we'll be coming back next month with the PUD ordinance amendment and a rezoning with some of the other parcels that we're adding. So at this point, I'll conclude the presentation right for now, unless you have questions.
Questions for the petitioner?
I thought Mr. Hutton had a question.
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
I might ask a question of the petitioner, if I could.
Should I go back to
No, you're fine. So at the north side, there's access agreements on either side of the property line. Is that a cross-access agreement for the roadway that goes into and out of the general development?
Yeah, that access easement connects with the right-in, right-out that's on Indianapolis, and it serves those, the facilities that are on those northern lots. So right now, that's being left in place until other things occur that may require that to be subdivided again or adjusted.
Is there a documented cross-access agreement for the parties?
Just on the original plat.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, I'll move to the public hearing portion of this petition. So open that up for a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone wishing to comment in any way on this petition? Anyone on our virtual platform wishing to speak on this petition? Seeing and hearing none, I will close the public hearing portion of this petition. Now we will turn it over to staff recommendation. Mr. Poland.
Okay. Staff recommendation, since the utility easements were not being affected, the plat was not sent out for agency review. Staff recommends for preliminary and final approval of the subdivision plat. If the Planning Commission agrees with the recommendation, then this report should be adopted as findings of fact.
Questions for Mr. Poland as the staff? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a recommendation for preliminary and final approval of the subdivision plat.
I'll make a motion for preliminary.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor, for making that recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Kazmierzak. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve preliminary and final, make preliminary and final approval of the subdivision plat. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Roll call on the motion.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Thomas Kazmierzak.
Yes.
Dan Spitali. Yes. Marcus Taylor.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Chair would also entertain a motion that the staff report be adopted for this petition as a finding of fact.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Kazmierzak, seconded by Councilman Spitali. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Roll call on the motion, please.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
William Hutton.
Yes.
Thomas Kazmierzak.
Yes.
Dan Spitali.
Yes.
Marcus Taylor.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Thank you very much. That ends the items for new business. Next item on the agenda is number 6, correspondence.
No correspondence.
Thank you. Item 7 is commissioner comments. Any comments from our fellow commissioners? Seeing none. Item 8, staff comments.
As referenced to you, there are petitions that we expect at the September meeting, that is September 19th. At this point, I know of 3 petitions and possibly a 4th.
Keep your calendars open for September 19th. We'll see you all then. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the Planning Commission? Anyone in the audience? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, Chair would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. I heard Commissioner Taylor make the first motion. I'll give the second to Commissioner Herbert. And is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.